Hi, I'm Katie.
And I'm Joe.
And today we're going to talk about going home to visit our Christian families. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Born Again Again podcast. If you like what we're doing on here, you can find us on our Facebook group, our Instagram, or our Patreon, and you can find all those links in the description below. Hey everybody, it's Saturday morning and we just woke up, let our dog outside, and we thought it would be fun to talk about our trip home and debrief just all of the emotions that we went through and conversations with you guys. So we're going to have a casual conversation about that today.
So we don't go home often to see our families just because we live over here. We live in New York City right now and they're back in Wisconsin where we grew up. And so it's kind of a big trip to go home and see them. And so we stayed for a total of 10 days this time. And I think I don't know, we were talking about this on the way home. I think if we were to go to see my family for 5 days and then come home, that would be fine. And then at a different time, go and see your family for 5 days or whatever and come home. It might be a little more manageable for us. But going home for that full 10 days ended up feeling pretty long.
Yeah, and it always feels really long. And I think this time we realized that it's because we have to go see two families. And it's really cool that our families live in the same place.
Yeah.
But it just does make the trip extra long.
Yeah.
And then everybody tries to pack seeing everybody into that time frame, like
right.
grandmas and like extra siblings and like sibling spouses and aunts and uncles. And it's like kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, it ends up being like a really busy time.
Yeah.
Not to mention that you just have to live out of a suitcase for that whole time. And that's always a little, just a little annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were you anticipating going home? Like, this was the first time we were going home since we told our parents that we were not Christian anymore, just like outright. And I had emailed with them and you had had some phone conversations with them.
Yeah. Well, I talked to my family quite a bit since we told them that we weren't Christian anymore. And so for my family, I wasn't too worried about it. Because like I said, we had already had a lot of those hard conversations. Although, I hadn't talked to my siblings about it or my sibling about it at all. And I hadn't talked to my grandparents about it at all. And I know that they all knew. And I don't know. I was a little nervous. I wasn't sure what to think. I wasn't sure if everything would be business as usual or if it was going to be like really weird. Cause we've heard stories of people going back and talking to their families and stuff and their families having really strong reactions that they didn't expect.
Yeah, but maybe we shouldn't have been reading those stories.
Well, maybe
freak us out.
maybe that's part of the lesson. Cause I think I was going in feeling nervous and feeling a bit on edge and feeling a little bit unsettled because I was so preoccupied with what everyone else was thinking about me, I guess.
Yeah. I think that every time we go home, we try to go in with a really good mindset. And so whenever we're going home, we prepare by listening to audiobooks on the drive back, like positive ones. This time we were reading
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yeah. So that one was, really pumping us up and we were meditating and stuff and trying to just be, in a better state of mind before we went home. And it always helps, like, for the first
it worked.
couple days.
We on the drive home, we were feeling great.
Yeah, and I think that just, like, as we keep meditating and just working on ourselves and stuff, like, we'll be able to go, like, a full 10 days, like, just being fully, responsible for our emotions and just calm and everything. But anyway, I was going in extra nervous because I had never talked to my family in person, and I knew that they loved me, and I wasn't going to go home and there wasn't going to be, like, like they weren't going to be weird with me, I didn't think.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing about going home this time for me was that my older brother was in town and he is a missionary from Israel and he has a wife and he has 3 daughters. And so the reason that we were going home was because he was in town. And all of my other family was going to get together around the same time who lived like in the near area. And so it was kind of like a big thing, like everybody come and see him. He's here with his family. And I was nervous for that because the last time we were home and he was there, he was trying to get us to do Bible studies and he was trying to get us to do communion at home. And I didn't understand what was happening with me at the time, but I'm looking back, that was when we were starting to lose our faith. And I remember having to be like, I'm just really uncomfortable with this. Could we just do this another time?
Yeah.
And I like cried during a Bible study, and it was just weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Actually, that last time that he was back and last time we had seen him was like 2 years ago, or maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was like right at the beginning of when all this stuff started unraveling for us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that trip. It was, at the time, it was uncomfortable. I think partially it was uncomfortable because we felt weird about doing Bible studies and stuff with the family. But the other half of it, which was maybe even more uncomfortable, was the fact that I felt like I should want to do these Bible studies. And like, what's wrong with me? Like, why don't I want to pray with family? Why don't I want to be doing these Bible studies?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that's weird. That was kind of our last impression.
Yeah, I was like a little bit nervous that I knew that everybody knew. I
You did know?
Yes.
I wasn't sure because I didn't know how much.
I know my parents knew, and I posted something to Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, that's true.
And I think that people just are polite and they wouldn't say anything to you. I mean, my siblings and my in-law and siblings. Mm-hmm. Sorry, what are they called?
In-laws?
Yeah, just in-laws. Okay. All right. It's morning. Yeah, and so I kind of knew that at any moment they could bring it up, and I was sort of anticipating a little bit of an ambush, and I was really avoiding being around at night.
Yeah.
When we could talk about it, just because I didn't think that I could handle it well. And I didn't want to come off like, I didn't want to have a bad conversation because I didn't want to like ruin our relationship or anything like that.
For anyone listening who's thinking like, what's wrong with you guys? You guys are just babies. It's just a conversation. I know it is. It's just a conversation. But this is something we've been talking about for a long time. And like Katie was saying, I've felt the same. I was kind of avoiding having any like alone time with the adults because I didn't really want to talk about it. Because yeah, like you said, we had a bunch of conversations on the way up there, like, should we talk about this at all? Or like, if someone tries to bring it up, should we just politely say like, hey, you know what? I'm really happy to like be here and see you, but I really would like to just keep it about lighter stuff right now. Because we weren't even sure if we really wanted to talk about all this. Yeah.
The thing with my family is that, and the thing with me too, is that I very easily, and we all very easily slip into a debate. And it's super, super stressful. My dad cannot just sit and listen. And like, he's not even trying to be rude. He just like loves to fight, like argue. And I kind of like it too. I really like a heated conversation, to an extent, but I do not like it with my family because that's where I kind of learned how to do it. And it's super uncomfortable. And I was just worried that I didn't want it to be that way because I think that Christians have a perception that when they're talking with what they would consider an atheist, that's how it goes, that you argue and I was just thinking about all like the stereotypical like conversations. And I knew that I didn't know, but I knew that if we talked that it would get kind of combative, and I just didn't want to then me become like so much more stereotypical, you know, like of course you're fighting, you don't have God, you don't have love. And,
right.
And so I felt like it was complicated. So I was really trying to prepare some sort of statement like, oh, like, let's not talk about it this time. Like, I'm not comfortable talking about it right now, blah, blah, blah. It does sound wimpy, but then if you understood my family, I mean, anything, you have to decide what you think is right for you at the time. Okay. So, throughout the week, so I just want to say that nothing really, really terrible happened, and we're not like building up some kind of thing. So I'm going to just spoil it right now for you. Nothing terrible happened, but we had a ton of observations and we came away with kind of a new perspective. I think.
For sure.
So throughout the whole week, we just noticed how much God was a part of our world. Yeah. And that was super shocking. I think that this was the time when we went back that we were the most removed. I mean, of course, we're very far removed from religion at this point. And coming back, we realized why we were Christian until we left. Yeah. In a way. There were, I don't know, signs of religion everywhere. We went to this restaurant near your parents' house, and they had little like wooden placards up on the wall, like with painted flowers and Bible verses. Did you see that?
No. Which place?
The soup shanty.
No, I didn't. But I mean, that seems so like consistent to me.
And we went to the Racine County Fair, and we bought this the most amazing soft pretzel from a stand. What was it called?
Oh, I don't remember.
Something about
Ben's Soft Pretzels.
And it was something about God in their slogan.
Like there was Bible verses on their sign, and yeah, it was
it's the county fair.
It was a Christian soft pretzel stand.
Yes, we bought, and when we went up, he asked us, "Are you two married?" And I don't think he was asking us for any reason because like of that, but it was just funny. I think like Christians like think about marriage as such like a high. Like, if you're married, you're better than other people who might be dating.
Right.
And he just said that we were a beautiful couple. But, like, it made him more beautiful for him because, I don't know. I was just thinking about, like, what people feel about marriage. And if you're married, like, you're holier in a way. And maybe that's not the case for you. But, like, that's how, like, we get the impression, like, my parents think like if a couple is living together, if they get married, that's more beautiful then. Like their relationship's better. They have more love. Mm-hmm. And I got that impression as well at home. But we realized just even in our families how much they talk about God.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom so many times would keep bringing it, and it's funny, I'm not throwing her under the bus because I feel like my family has taken all this really well and have adjusted to it much better than I thought they were going to back before they told them about any of it. But it's just funny how often I would comment on something like, whoa, look at that flower. It's so crazy how it looks like that. And she would kind of say under her breath, like, well, yeah, I think God made it that way.
It's funny because you're kind of setting yourself up for that now. It's like, I'm like, Joe, don't you say something about how
it's hard, though,
looks pretty.
I feel so in wonder at the world around me now, and it's hard. I don't know. I guess I make those observations a lot with you.
You do.
Yeah. But so it's funny whenever I'd make them back at home, my mom was like, yeah, God made it that way. Or like reading those facts on Reddit the other day, reading all those facts about like wildlife and whales and giraffes and stuff, and my mom having to hold her tongue and saying things about like, well, God made it like that. Or like, yeah. So it was way more frequent than I remembered. And it's weird when you leave and then you come back home and you go back into the environment. I didn't realize how frequently God came up in conversation, like conversations that had nothing to do with religion or faith or anything.
Oh my gosh. So we bought a new car because we had our car since we were married 8 years ago, and it was horrible. Oh my gosh. we've driven it to Portland and back to Wisconsin like 5 times, and then we drove it all the way across to New York, and then we drove it back to Wisconsin, then back to New York. And we're going to have to do that. We thought we were going to have to do that again. And there were probably other trips. I think we drove it to LA from Portland. Yeah. And it was rattly. The air conditioning didn't work. For a while, one of the windows wouldn't go down. So it was only one window. It was so hot in the summer. And so we decided to get a new car. Served us well. And we were in Kenosha, Wisconsin at a dealership. We go to the dealer, and he's like a very, very Midwestern man. And
a super nice guy,
car salesman.
Yeah.
And he like brings up God and what else?
Out of nowhere.
What was he saying? We should watch.
We were talking to him, and he, out of nowhere, he was like, yeah, I'm pretty intellectual. Like I have a taste for, smarter things, and I like to watch intellectual videos. And I think you guys would really get a kick out of this. You guys should check this out. And it was this video called Signature in the Cell. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it, and I think I've heard of it before, but it's about how scientists claim that they've found like a signature of intelligent design in the DNA of a cell or something like that. So this came out of nowhere, and this is just a random car salesman, and so he shows me this video, and he's like, oh, you guys should see this. And I believe in God.
And we're just screaming inside. What are we talking about right now?
We just have like little half smiles.
We just want to buy a car. Yes, exactly. Like the meme or the little face with the tiny smile. Yeah, little
tiny smile. We're looking at each other because I really wanted the car, but I was like, what is this guy talking about?
You have to.
So yeah, he was saying, I believe in God. And he was like, I think a lot of people, they might believe in God too, but they don't want to admit it because they don't want to like take responsibility for their lives. Because if God exists, then they've got some answering to do. And at this point inside, I'm like screaming, but I don't know. It's weird. It was weird in that environment because it almost like I had compassion for him, because how could he believe anything else in that environment?
And you know what's funny is that if we didn't tell your parents because they would like literally die. Like they would love that so much. They would think that was God pulling us back to him.
They might,
but I would say that, we came back to the Midwest and every single person here is Christian. So of course, why does this not happen like any other place?
Right.
But, and in the same conversation, he told us that he was super conservative and very Republican, and he, like, said something about effing Democrats. And so we learned it was just we lived in a weird world.
We lived in a weird world.
Where everybody was very vehement about what they believed and very outspoken, and almost to a point of, you shouldn't be that outspoken as a car salesman about your religious
that was bizarre.
beliefs.
As a car salesman, just as like a strategy for selling cars, I would imagine that saying those kind of things. Like if we were really passionate Democrats and he called Democrats fucking retarded, which is what he said.
That's what he said, yeah.
I feel like a lot of people would have been really upset by that.
Yeah, luckily we're not easily offended. I think that what we're learning is that people are made by their environments and the people that brought them up, and they're not responsible. I don't want to say they're not responsible, but a lot goes into making a human, and like a lot goes into who you are. And I can't necessarily blame this single man for what he believes.
No.
Because he was brought up in this. Of course, everyone needs to take responsibility for their actions and be a good person, but I'm like realizing that these people are a product of their environment, and it's like I can't fight with every single one of them and tell them what I believe. Like, if I've learned anything from proselytizing as a Christian, you do not get converts by like being combative, you don't arguing get converts with people, debating.
By like telling someone new information. I feel like this guy probably grew up here. The other thing we noticed is that the number of churches in our hometown is absurd. It's like every corner. It's crazy. I never noticed before. I never noticed it when we were living there. But now we live in New York now, and even here there are more churches than where we used to live in Portland. It's just less of the culture of religion. And so going back home, it's like religion and God and Christianity is everywhere. It almost seems like it's kind of just a given. Like, everyone believes in God. If you don't believe in God, then why not? Like, aren't you a moral person?
You would be weird. And I think like we had this realization that the cool people go to church. Like, if you're a trendy, like, hipster person who cares about essential oils and good food, organic food, you go to farmers markets. I feel like a lot of those people, that's like a church culture in the Midwest. Like, if you want to be someone who cares about the environment, if you want to be, somebody who's like doing more holistic healing or like cares about like a whole diet or whatever, you can call that a hippie, but I feel like out in the West Coast, that's kind of like what people are like, but they don't necessarily go to church.
Right. And they might even be against religion.
No, not against religion, but like here, like the only people that seemed that way are people who go to church, and specifically our church. Right. Our church in Racine.
Yeah.
But it seemed weird. It seemed like to me, it seems cool to be a Christian where we're from. Like, especially if you're going to be a Christian like that. But like, I don't know. It's like it's a different frame. And a lot of ways, I felt like our hometown is in a different time too, because it's different than just religion. It feels sort of like it's in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that also can contribute to the way people feel about other races, other people, other religions, and all of that stuff. But every time we go back, I feel as though it's a really big culture shock, and it's really difficult to just be myself when I'm home. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure everybody experiences this.
Well, I think it was something we realized, and actually part of like a really good conversation we had with your family, but it's just weird growing up because we've left home and changed a lot on our own and become kind of new people. Not even just about religion. Religion's a huge part of that, but in other ways, and forming our own beliefs and stuff. And so, when we come back home, it totally feels like it's in the past or like it's stuck in a certain time. And like you said, I think like the belief in religion kind of is consistent with that, but it's not necessarily because of religion that it feels so stuck in the past. It's just like the whole environment is stuck in a certain time and like a past way of thinking. And it was bizarre.
Yeah, I want to come back to talking about that conversation with my parents, but there was something that I noticed in the difference between our families and how we were brought up in religion as well that I never noticed before. And it was that, well, in your family, it seemed as though they were more fundamentalists about
my
their religion.
family was,
yes.
for sure.
But like, what was strange is they don't really talk about church as much. Like, or they do, your mom mentions God, but nobody else really mentions God in your family. And they go to church sometimes, but it's on the weekends when they have to do the music. And so it's like, okay, well, they were super fundamentalist, but they like had their, I don't know, it wasn't so strict about talking about God or going to church.
Right.
When we went to my parents' house, they're not necessarily fundamentalist. They grew up more Lutheran, and I think they go to a non-denominational right now. And I feel like they might be a little bit more loose, like with interpretations in the Bible. I don't really know.
I think it's looser about like which sins are bad. Like
yes,
it seemed like when my environment growing up, it was like one of the biggest focuses was like not sinning and like super important that you like abstain from sex and like make sure you're home at a certain time because nothing good happens after 10 p.m. or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Did your parents ever say that to you?
I think so.
Oh, it's weird.
But like your family was less about that. Like, I don't know, they seemed less intense about that kind of stuff. Like you could watch more movies than I could and stuff like that.
But what I noticed about them was that maybe they weren't like fundamentalists in that way, but they talk about God all the time. And they know so much about God. We're playing a game. We're playing code names, and people are giving out clues that have to do with the Bible to bring words together.
Yeah, with like where Paul went to preach his message.
Yeah, like very, very intellectual clues. Yeah. My parents and my whole family is super smart. Regardless of whether you think like religious people are smart or not, they're really smart people, and they think a lot, and it's intense talking with them and being around them because they know so many facts. And like, if you say something, they'll just bring up this thing and I don't know anything to say. I can't say anything back to that because I wasn't like studying that or researching it. My brother is getting is he getting a PhD in Bible studies?
Yeah.
I didn't know
that. He knows Bible.
He knows Bible. So, it's just, I really noticed this difference this time that my parents and my whole family, we talk about the Bible all the time. My younger brother even brought up like Bible study and books he was reading, and we were all like just freely talking about it. And it was awkward. I didn't know how to act, and I felt like it wasn't my place to say anything because they're not like attacking me. They're just sharing what they're doing in their life. Yeah. So it's not my place to just be like, well, you guys shouldn't. Did you ever think about this?
Right.
Like, or I don't know.
Because it's more than just an activity they're doing, or more than just like a book they're reading. It's a part of who they are, and it's a part of who we were too. And so it's hard. On one hand, you want to share what your feelings are about this, but on the other hand, it's like, well, they're just living their lives, and this is who they are, and like, who am I to come here and say, well, you guys like shouldn't think that anymore?
Well, it's funny too because we came from such a long background of learning what we learned, and there's no way that we could say one thing, that would make them feel any differently. And I know that in my family it would just spark a fight. Yeah. And so I don't feel it's beneficial. Yeah. But
debating is not beneficial at this point.
One of the nights, though, I thought this was a weird thing for my dad to say. We were playing a game, and we were all talking about a platypus. And because, we were playing Codenames, and the platypus card is out there. And we're all like, what's a platypus? And my...
because we found out it has a beak and it has venom.
We know, I knew what a platypus is, but my sister-in-law, she's from Europe, she's from France, and she was like, she didn't really know what a platypus was, and she wanted to know the French word for it. And we were just we looked it up, we looked up a picture of it, and it's so weird, it has, what does it have, fur and a beak, and like you said, and it lays eggs, and
it has poison talons on its back legs.
Oh yeah, it's just like a weird creature. Yeah. We just, why is this creature here? it's so weird. And my dad was like, I always thought it was like God's sense of humor. God's like a joke that God did. Like, hey, look, a platypus. and that really like struck me. And I was thinking I would have said that at one point in my life, but now it seems like I know people say a lot of things that religious people say are cop-out answers, but that was like one of the biggest cop-out answers I've ever heard for this animal.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna do one joke with this animal, and then, like, there's so many other terrible things that are happening. He's like, I'll just put a little joke in here for you guys if you want to laugh about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that seems like so, I'm sorry, but, like, I try to really respect what people believe, and I'm trying harder, but that's, like, you gotta stop and think about that one, I think. Maybe there's something different you could say about what God was intending there.
Right.
Because that kind of seems unfair to, like, all the rest of the people that are suffering, that God, like, decides to make the platypus as a joke, but then he can't, like, help all these other people, and he's like, well, I guess the world has fallen. I don't know, it really struck me. When people say, like, where the what do they call them? The species, like, the transitory, the transition species in evolution. Yeah. You know, I think, like, I don't know anything about evolution, but I think, hey, this animal's kind of weird. Like, it's not like any one thing. Like, I don't know. What do you think? Like, maybe will it
transition into something else?
Will it cause you to look into another solution? I'm not saying that has anything to do with evolution, but I'm just saying, like, let's look at science.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I feel like even him saying that, it's not necessarily that he, like, believes, like, yes, I stand by this is God's joke, and that's the only explanation. It was just kind of a joke in passing, but it highlighted something that was, like, really consistent with the rest of the way they're thinking. Because, like you were saying, your family is really intellectual. And I mean, my family is too. I feel like they're not dumb people. And I feel like when we were Christian, we weren't dumb people. You know, we were well-informed, and we read books, and we thought about things a lot. But it's weird how in Christianity, it seems like it's so separate from the rest of your intellectual mind. Mm-hmm. Something like that, like the platypus, your dad making a joke about that. Like, that's a total cop-out answer. It doesn't make any sense. It's just like a throwaway thing. Like, well, I don't really need to think about that. It's just God did it. You know?
Yeah.
And it was the same kind of thing, which really struck me a lot, which hasn't ever before, how weird it is that we stop and pray before meals.
Oh, I forgot that you got freaked out.
Yeah, this really freaked me out, because obviously we're here living on our own. We don't, like, pray before meals. Haven't done that in a long time. But so when we went home and we were all kind of hanging out, we're getting some plates and putting food on our plate and stuff, and your dad calls everyone in the room and is like, all right, let's pray before the meal. And I was thinking, like, oh my God, I forgot about this. I forgot that we do this.
I know.
And so then we're all kind of just standing awkwardly looking around. Everyone's waiting for him to start, and then it's like, okay, everyone bows their heads and they know what to do. At this point, I don't bow my head anymore, and I just feel kind of weird in this environment. And so I was just kind of looking around while your dad started praying for the food. And I was thinking, it is so bizarre that all of these people I'm with, who are, like, totally normal, practical, like, common sense thinking people in the rest of their lives, thinking folk, they all believe in this, like, invisible friend. And it's so weird.
It's
how
even
before
hard for
meals,
me to hear you say
I know,
it. Because as soon as we talk about prayer, it's like, well, but you have to pray. Like, it's a tradition. Like, let them pray before dinner or whatever. But it's like, it is weird. It's weird.
This was the first time that I experienced that feeling of prayer being weird. Because for a lot of the Christian things that we experience now, there's a lot of me, like, can't see them as weird yet. Because I think I'm not separated from it far enough. Mm-hmm. But this was the first time that praying as a group before meals part of me thought it seemed really weird. The other part of me was like, yeah, this is normal. But there was a hint this time where it was like, man, this is really so bizarre weird that we're doing this, that we all, like, put our heads down and we say these words just into the silent house for some reason.
That's funny. It
really struck me.
You told me right after, and I was like, wow, I'm not that separate. I guess I still have some separation to work on.
How did it feel for you? Just like nothing?
I didn't even listen.
Yeah.
I just tuned it out. And I think, like, it didn't seem weird because, like, okay, there's a sense of, I don't want to believe that anymore, or I don't believe that anymore. And then a sense of, that's weird that people believe that. Yeah. And I'm still at this, like, I think I don't see that for me. I don't believe that, but I can't, like, widen. If it was, like, growing out of me, like a bubble, whatever, like, growing out of me, I haven't widened that bubble to other people yet of it's weird also for you.
I see.
It's only
Yeah.
weird for me. Because I'm probably insecure about what I believe, you know, in a way. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what I've decided. This is right for me.
Yeah.
You know, but in this particular case, I haven't widened that to, it's also right for you to not pray.
Right.
Like, you guys, what are you doing?
Getting there. Yeah.
But I remember when that happened for Jesus dying on a cross and everyone being so happy that his blood and the sacrifice was something that they would say they're happy and joyful about. And I remember when that widened from that's super weird to that. Why do you all love that this religion is based on a human sacrifice?
Yeah.
I remember when that one grew out.
Yeah.
You know,
I see
it
what
was
you're
like,
saying.
it was like, you guys are, this is weird. Like, this is like some weird cult thing.
Right.
Like blood. You're talking about blood all the time.
Yeah.
Like, this is that sounds like a very ancient way that ancient people thought. They sacrifice things. We don't sacrifice things anymore. It's strange to like talk about blood washing us. It seems like very ritualistic and like very spooky and whatever you think about it, whatever. But I've like extended that to now see that it's strange.
I see.
But I can't do it with prayer.
Yeah.
Because
that's weird.
because it's a little bit okay. You're not talking about blood and
Right. It's
death.
like, it's less weird what we talk about. It's just kind of like thanking God and stuff.
Yeah. But
I think what struck me was that I had been spending so much time like with your dad and with your family and really connecting and like laughing and feeling like, yeah, we're on the same page. We can really get along and be friends and, you know, talk about things and relate. And then we go into the kitchen for lunch and it's like, okay, let's pray. And for me, it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
we're just we're stopping the normal like conversation, kind of like being normal people.
Yeah.
And,
Like I thought we were both normal on the same page, but then you guys still like close your eyes and say some words to an invisible guy before you eat because you think you're like, that's your eternal destiny or something. I don't know. It's weird too, because I know how they feel and I felt like that too. And it wasn't weird to me in any way until like 2 years ago.
Of course not.
You know, and so it was just a strange phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, and after that, we talked about how strange it is, the things we pray, because like we were texting with our friends and they're like, what do you say? What do you say when you pray?
Yeah.
I love how like excited they get and the curious. Cause like for me, it's like, why you don't know, like, or I mean, it's just everybody says the same things,
Yeah.
you know, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that all of our family can be here together and we're all here safely. And you ask that we ask that you bless this food.
Thank you for the food.
Thank you for the food and whatever in your name. Amen.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how afterwards it's so weird that we don't say, like, we just come together and everybody just look at each other and we all look and be like, my dad says, I'm so thankful that all of you are here. I love you all so much and I love our family. And I want to thank my beautiful wife for making this amazing lunch today. I'm sure it's going to be delicious. I'm so proud as a dad to see all of you and like what you've done with your life and like your children and your spouses. And I'm so excited to spend the rest of the time with all of you here. You know what I mean? That made me like, so like almost choked me up right now. Just thinking about it. But like,
if your dad were to stand up and say that before a meal,
that's like a prayer.
Yeah, it is.
That's being thankful and giving thanks. And I think that a lot of people do that. And I think other cultures do that. And maybe people who are different, have a different spirituality do those kinds of things. And I think that's that you can't take everything out of Christianity and like just get rid of it. Like you still can have thankfulness.
Yeah.
Like giving thanks is healing. So healing.
Right.
Still. And like even like Jesus tells you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jesus is great. No, but I think like I was thinking about how powerful that would be if he was like that.
Yeah. And how unifying it would be too. And it would bring the family closer together. Cause as it is now, I feel like we were all spending time together, really like jiving and feeling close as a family. But when you pray as a family, it's like, hold on, everyone. Remember, this isn't about you. This isn't about us as a family. This is about God. What it is. So it kind of takes you out of it again. It's like, no, don't thank your mom for the food. Thank God, because God
everything
provided
good
the
you
food.
have is because of God. So like, don't get too happy over here. Like,
yeah,
he gives and takes away.
Oh, it would be so wonderful if that's how we started meals, was that, just like actually thanking and expressing love to the people in the room.
Well, we can do that when we have our family.
We can do that now.
And our family of two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. So what do you feel like you would do differently? Is there anything you feel like you would do differently if we were to just redo this first family trip again?
Yeah, I do. I think I do feel like there were some things that I would do differently. I kind of want to talk about that conversation that we had at the very end first, and then we can
Sure.
talk about that, like everything with respect to that and how I would change that and
Sure.
everything. But also I wanted to add, I forgot that one of the times when we were going to pray before a meal, everybody was getting their food and my younger brother was like freaking out. He's like, can we eat? Can we pray? Like, can we pray so I can eat? Like, I want to eat. And my sister-in-law was like, we can pray after we eat. And I knew that my brother didn't really want to do that. He's like, let's just pray. Like, let's pray. Get everybody together. I want to eat. I want to eat. And I was just like, this isn't some kind of magic spell we have to do. And I feel like I think that maybe some people heard me, but I felt a little bit bad for saying that.
It's weird how you think of it like that.
I got so frustrated.
Though.
I was like, let's just eat. Don't worry about getting everybody together. We have so many people. Like, we have my sister and her husband, my brother and his wife, my younger brother and his wife, and then there's 7 children that my older brother and sister have.
It was like,
and so it's
more
just
than
like,
15
it was kind
people.
of crazy.
Yeah.
And all the kids weren't there, and I didn't want to wait for them, and the food is hot. And I feel like it's so stressful. Everybody's like, we need to get everyone together. We need to pray so that we can eat, so that we can, like, for what? And so I was just like, this isn't some kind of magic spell. And I kind of wish I wouldn't have said that.
Well,
but nobody even said
anything
anything to me.
Yeah, right.
Everybody ignored it. It's typical.
Yeah. But so on the last night, we ended up having like a long, in-depth conversation with Katie's family, which we hadn't had the whole time. And it was the first time we had talked about any of this since you sent an email to your parents and like posted about it on Facebook.
Yeah. So the last night that we were there, this trip had been really chaotic with all of the kids. They're a little bit older now. I mean, the oldest is maybe 9. And so they really wanted to play with us the whole time. Like, they want to play with everyone. They want to, like, us to push them on the swing. They want us to go to their forts in the woods. And it was super distracting this time, actually, to talk to any of the adults.
Which was kind of nice.
Well, it was nice,
like
but I wanted to talk to my brother and my sister-in-law and it was nice. So, like you were saying, like, it kind of took up a lot of our energy, so we didn't really have to, after a while, we realized, we don't really have to worry about talking to anyone or anybody talking to us, because nobody's going to say anything around these kids.
Yeah.
And they were kind of up late, because it's hard to put, like, 7 kids to bed, And so, like, they were kind of running around, and we weren't staying at my family's house, because kind of everyone was staying there, so we were staying at Joe's family's house, and we would leave, like, kind of earlier in the evening. But the last evening, my other 2 siblings had gone home, and, we were there, and I knew that we were going to end up talking. And I was kind of dreading it, and I was just like, it's quieter now. So I felt like we should stay. I felt like we should be good kids and stay a little bit later in the night and, like, just talk and see what we were going to talk about. Mm-hmm. I felt that a past me would have just left, because we had the opportunity to, but I was just thinking, and I was thinking that I wanted to be more open to talking to my parents. And also I did have a little bit of guilt that my mom was sitting there and saying, like, oh, we miss you. And so it was like a combination of both of those things. And we sat down, and my older brother was there, and he's the one who's a missionary in Israel, and he started telling some stories, right, about people in Israel and, like, just what's been going on there. And, like, he told a story about a young man who stole from, like, a collection box and he said that that guy confessed it to him, and he's, like, kind of like known as a rascal or whatever, and, like, he came and confessed it to my brother and said, it was, like, a long story, but, like, something like, okay, do you think those guys, the popes, what do you call them? The friars, the monks, who with the collection box would forgive him. And they're like, oh, I think so. Let's go ask. And so, like, he went with him, and they asked for forgiveness, and the monks were, like, so forgiving. And the guy, like, I don't know that really touched him. And like, so he told us these kinds of stories of just like, basically that was like the miracle of forgiveness. And then he told us other stories about people like coming to Jesus, or like they're Muslim, but they like feel they've read the New Testament, and they have had, he's like, I've met so many people who've had dreams that they've seen Jesus. And he was talking about this something called the Emmanuel healing prayer, and how like it's something that's very immersive, and you help people like, it's basically like a meditation. You get in a meditative state, and then you like can see like visions of things, visualize things, and visualize past hurts. And then a lot of people see Jesus there. And all the while I do want to like say things like, well, don't you think if you're like reading the Bible and constantly thinking about God, or people are talking to you about Jesus, that's common to see him, because that's how I was.
Yeah.
I did have dreams of Jesus, and I had a really like once I had a really, really big prophecy dream, and I told my pastor about it. And and now I have dreams about the things I think about now.
Yeah, right.
So I think that our minds are really powerful. But I didn't, like, I felt like it wasn't important to say that then. But so we were talking about it, and then of course we started, do you remember like how this conversation transitioned to talking about like God and us? Well, at some point we basically said, or someone said, like, we know that we don't really know exactly what you guys believe, but, we believe this. And I think the conversation was different than I thought. It was funny because my brother he mentioned that sometimes like people can get something in their head, and then like it's like, actually was he talking about scientific, that you can't
he was
change your brain or something?
He was talking about, this struck me the most. It was right at the beginning of this conversation. He was saying that like something I've realized is that for a lot of these people I'm telling about Jesus, they can't hear it, because their whole life they've been taught that being a Muslim is the correct way, and that Jesus is just a prophet. And so for them, they come up with all these reasons why Jesus couldn't have died and rose again on the cross. And they come up with all these reasons why he didn't actually go into the grave, or maybe it was like a different spirit took his place on the cross or something like that. And so he was just expressing how for him, it's really weird when he's trying to share Jesus with Muslims. They are so brainwashed to believe that Jesus isn't real that they can't hear this new truth. That's what he was expressing.
We were both screaming inside because we feel the same way. We feel that we couldn't hear any of what we're talking about, any of this side of things when we were Christian.
Right.
You can't hear it.
No, because we had already decided that Jesus was real and that Christianity was true, and so we couldn't hear it either. And so, yeah, hearing him say that, I wanted to be like, yeah, what you're saying right now is exactly why we're not Christian.
Well, I was like nodding at him and smiling, and I was like, yeah, I know. Isn't it weird that happens? Yes, it's strange. And, so the conversation, like, we talked about religion a little bit, and I was asking a few questions, and like, I was saying like, well, the Bible is just like, why is the Old Testament like so violent, and like all of these things. And my brother even brought up some of the things that we talk about all the time. He was saying like that, I studied the Bible, and like, how people say there's tons of contradictions. And he was saying that like, he said something that it sounded really smart at the time, but if I try to repeat it, it's not going to sound the same. And so then it made me really curious, like some people don't view those as contradictions. If you look at old literature, those weren't contradictions in the old literature sense, but now they would be considered contradictions. But back in the day, those aren't contradictions. That's just how people wrote or something.
I don't know. I didn't understand it.
And then he had a lot of things like that. He said that he went through a time when he was so far from God, and he like almost became an atheist. And he said that the Bible seemed so old to him, like it was like dead basically. But then he started seeing how the church in China was building up, and that really like said it was like the church of Acts, right?
And he had a really powerful experience with prayer and stuff. Yeah. I was saying, we started talking about it, and we were saying, we also, I feel like there's just so much more, like God isn't necessary in that, like people can get in those meditative states without
any kind of prayer. And he was like, yeah, I know. And eventually I kind of saw that we were talking about religion specifically, and we were saying religion, and my brother kept saying, okay, no, we're talking about Jesus. And I know when people say that, they mean like Jesus is a personal relationship and religion is everything else. But to us now, everything is a religion if you subscribe to like a book. We're just talking about like if you're Christian, not, and we're including if you say Jesus is your personal savior, and you have a relationship with him. That's religion still. Yes. But like, so I just kind of had to be like, okay, we're talking about all of that, like even that too. My dad thinks that we don't see the loving nature of Jesus. And we asked, we came out and asked like, do you guys think that we're going to hell now? We feel uncomfortable being home because we don't like that if we're here, that we don't want people judging us and thinking, okay, well, they're lost, they're going to hell now. I think I would like to feel that you guys, whatever you believe is fine, and I don't condemn you for it, and I would want that same in return. I would like that you just let us believe what we want and don't have any condemnation or judgment for us. And I can't ever get a straight answer out of Christians, whether or not they think I'm going to hell. Because who's going to say that? Who's going to say that I'm going to go to hell? Who's going to say that
to their daughter?
But my dad was just like, no, it's not that. It's that you will be it's like just a separation from God. And like God is everywhere, but that if you don't believe in him, you will be separated from him. And Joe was like, well, so are we separated from God right now? Because I really love my life. I mean, I don't think you exactly said it like that, but I know what my dad is getting at, but I would like him to be more clear about it and just maybe come outright and say what he really believes.
Yeah.
So after a while, we were kind of realizing that talking about like specific aspects of the Bible and Christianity was not really going to get us anywhere. And like I said before, it's not really beneficial to debate. And I kept saying...
it kind of started turning into like more of a debate than us just sharing what we were feeling. And it was like 11:30 at night, and we just didn't have time for that.
My dad was asking like about like, how do you explain like creation and all the beauty in the world? And I was like, I can't... Eventually I was like, Dad, I've read a lot of stuff, but I can't explain it to you because I'm not like a PhD. So if I try to, you will have so many questions from me, like, cause I was kind of joking with him. That's kind of how he is. Mm-hmm. Like he can't just have a regular conversation with you. You have to have like a million credentials in order to have a conversation with him about certain things. And so I'm like, I just want to like express that it's just hard. I was like, regardless of religion, I finally said it's super hard coming back home because I feel as though Joe and I have changed so much, but I feel I'm still connected to you here. And it's a strange feeling that when we come home, I notice that Joe acts strange at his home. And when we come to my house, you notice that I act strange, unlike myself. And we started talking about that, and my mom actually brought up that she felt the same with my dad at his parents, and my sister-in-law brought up that she feels a similar way when she sees her parents. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I feel as though we can't talk about what we really think here because everybody else is against us in a way. They believe something else. And she brought up this, which was kind of nice. And she said, it's the same. I feel I can relate because it's the same for me, but opposite when I go see my family, we're not allowed to talk about religion. So we can't talk about what we've been doing. Yeah. And I felt for her. At first I didn't because I understood why her family would set those boundaries. But then I felt for her because it sucks when you go to your family or anyone and you feel you're not free to talk about what you are really into.
Like who you are.
Like what you're really passionate about. Just that, Right. When you can't express something that you care about, it just sucks. And so I think that we had a really nice conversation of opening up with our family. And I felt that they understood just that it is hard to come home and be yourself. And my dad was like, I want to know everything about you and everything that you think. And I felt that it was so beautiful.
Right. I felt like, really loved and understood in that.
I was not expecting that. And I don't know why, because I feel like we've had other conversations with my family like that before where we leave and we're like, wow, it's nice. They seem that they get us. And get, like, just how hard it is to be a person.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's like something that you can have in common, then that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know? It's super hard for me because we were talking on the way home about it and we're like, that conversation was so good and so beautiful, but there's still like, I just don't understand how they can be religious still and be so smart. I'm sorry, like, if that's offensive, but a lot of the things they're saying, I just want to be like, you don't need God for that.
Yeah. Everything
like,
they're saying. Yeah.
And I know that I have a lot of inferiority issues with my family because of how like smart they are and how good they are at arguing. I mean, I feel like you know.
I think you think that they're better at arguing and like smarter than they are.
Okay,
Not
I'm
that
really
they're
good
bad
at
it,
I'm
but,
really
like,
good at debasing myself because I learned that from my family.
Yeah, okay. Oh, there
okay,
you go.
and it's just like I want to say right now, I know I'm not the smartest person, whatever, and so maybe I could be wrong, but like it's hard going home because those bring up all the same feelings that like I feel inferior if I'm not like a PhD in something.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just a weird conversation because it was like super, super positive, but there was still something in the back of my mind of like, if only they could be free from certain things that I felt freedom from without this biblical God.
Yeah.
It was killing me when I heard my brother saying that he's like, he had a point when he was like, he was getting so hurt from the like Christianity because it wasn't real to him. And just like forcing that relationship seems to me like staying in an abusive relationship and now
forcing his relationship with God.
Yeah. Like that he's like being abused in a way. He's not getting anything in return or whatever.
Right.
And then like he eventually finds something that hooks him back in again. And then it's like fresh again for him.
Right.
You know?
Well, and then it's like, well, I already tried being an atheist, but like really, you know, probably not.
I was like, did you read any atheist material? And he was like, not any full books. And then I'm like, you have to try.
But like at that point, you don't want to not be a Christian. You know, that's where we were for a while. I think some of the things I took away from the trip, and then maybe we can talk about some of the things we do differently too, if we were going to do this next time. But some of the things I took away, first of all, I feel like I came back here with a lot more compassion for the Christian people in my life, which maybe seems counterintuitive, but like we were talking about earlier, if you're living in an environment where the majority of people around you are Christian or at least believe in God, and if there's Bible verses all over the place at not even religious places, in the grocery store and like at the bank and at the restaurant, and if everybody in your life is Christian and talks about God and talks about their Bible studies and talks about the Christian books they're reading, you are going to be a Christian. You know, it's not like our families are choosing to be closed-minded. I don't think it's that they're choosing to ignore logic. I think they believe what they believe because it makes sense to them, and they've thought about it a lot, and all of the examples they see in their life all point back to God and point back to Jesus. And so how could they see any differently, you know? And so for me, I think being here and being a bit isolated, just me and you here in this apartment and talking to all you guys online and reading about ex-Christian things and reading about atheism and stuff, it seems like so obvious. Like, how could anybody be Christian? But when you go to an environment like that, it seems obvious. Oh, this is how you could be Christian. This is how I was Christian. And so it helped me to not be upset, I guess, or helped me not to get frustrated when my family can't see certain things that seem obvious to me, or that maybe seem like they're being closed-minded. It doesn't seem that way to them. It doesn't feel that way to them. And like, I have to just be willing to accept that.
I know. I feel more compassion coming back here as well. And I feel more compassion after having that conversation with my family, that they like are really loving people.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think like,
and they've thought through things.
Yes,
it's not like they just have turned a blind eye to logic. Like, they've thought through things, and the reason why they believe what they believe, they have reasons for it.
I think that a lot of times we talk about how would your future self react to this, your future mature self, you know, who's in a sense better than who you are now and in a better place. And it's like, I if I want to be fully accepted and loved for what I believe now, although it's so different from my family, then I need to go back in and not think of them as idiots and not think of them like that. Well, how can you believe this still?
Yeah.
You know, and I need to go and care and completely respect that what they believe.
Right.
And I know that like it is loving to be honest with people and tell them, you know, okay, whatever, this is what I believe or whatever. But like there's a certain point when you want to just have a loving relationship with your family. And
regardless
if you
of
can
anyone's
find some
beliefs.
common ground, if they're not like constantly like, I don't know, giving you like backhanded Christian comments and they want to talk about other things, then just be loving and respect them for what they believe.
For who they are.
And who they are.
Right.
And like you don't like go in with a mission of trying to tell them all of your
deconvert them.
atheist like tricks.
Yeah,
You know what I
right.
mean? Like people are on their own spiritual journey, and that is frustrating sometimes. But
It's frustrating when you feel like you have some insight or you know the truth, but it's exactly what we don't want Christians to do to us.
So we need to give it back to them. And it needs to start with like us on the other side, because we don't have like a hell to torture them in. So we need to like have compassion.
Yeah. We need to be love to them and accept them for who they are and accept that they're, like you said, they're on a journey too. And maybe their journey won't end up in the same destination that ours does. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's not our mission, but like,
It's not our mission to control what anybody else
no,
believes. It is our mission to share what we think in a loving way.
And who we are.
And if someone wants to listen to it, then they can.
Yeah.
But it's not your mission to control anybody's life.
Right. So another thing I took away is compassion for myself, and compassion for us. Cause I think too, after talking about this stuff so much here by ourselves, it starts to feel like, why aren't we over this yet? Or like, we should just like drop this religion stuff. It's, you know, it's in the past. We don't really need to think about it so much anymore. But going back home again, I remembered like, oh, I'm a product of this environment. And this is like a really, really significant shift that we went through to leave Christianity, because our upbringing was so thoroughly Christian.
I realized that too, how thoroughly Christian it was.
Yeah. And I'd kind of forgotten how strong it was. And so going back home, that was a really good reminder, like, holy cow, I came from this place. I need to give myself a little bit of slack if I feel like I'm not where I want to be yet in terms of like my mental health or my personality or whatever, because I've made a huge 180 in the last few years from this place in Wisconsin to where we are now. So yeah, I think in both cases, it felt good to come away with that. And it's maybe different than how we felt in the past when we go home and visit our families and maybe feel a little bit resentful or like irritated. There was some of that, but I feel like overall the takeaway is like, okay, I want to be soft. I want to be loving towards my family. I want to be loving towards myself. And all of us deserve that, regardless of what we think, what we believe.
So really quick, is there anything you'd do differently?
Yeah. Well, I have two things. The first thing, I think we really built up how big of a deal these conversations were going to be in our minds before we got home. And we like I thought about them too much, and I probably was assuming things that weren't true, and, you know, reading other people's stories, like horror stories of people's families and stuff, made me feel really worried coming home. Like, oh my gosh, this is going to be really hard, you know, all this stuff. So on one hand, I think it's good to prepare. On the other hand, I think I just thought about it too much, and I built it up in my mind that it was going to be this huge, like momentous, really scary, difficult conversation that we were going to have with our families. And, it didn't end up playing out that way. So kind of leading into the next one is that I wish I would have been the one to bring up the conversation, and I wish I would have talked about it like right away in our trip, because I think if instead of waiting until like the last day to have the conversation, if we would have talked about it right away up front, it would have been like less of a big deal. We would have felt probably a lot closer to our families the entire rest of the time. Because
we did feel really close to my family the last night, and
like,
we were saying, I wish that
understood.
we would have stayed another day.
Yeah, right. So I wish we would have gotten that over with right away. Because I felt awkward like the whole time, and I felt like I was kind of avoiding people the whole time because I was scared of having that conversation. And in hindsight, I wish I would have just taken responsibility, and like we could have just dived into it right away. I think it would have been a lot better.
Yeah. And I feel like all we needed to do would just be to sit down and say, how are you guys? And how's living here been? And, we've been a little bit nervous to come home because obviously we just told you how we feel about Christianity, and we recognize that all of you believe that here, and we want to be respectful of you, and we didn't want to be an outcast.
That would have been so easy.
Just like that kind of thing, not starting off with like, so y'all are Christian,
I've heard of
y'all
evolution.
are wrong. Just like, hey, I want to express that I feel a little isolated and different coming home now, and then your family can be like, oh, I can see how you would feel that way. I don't want to make you feel that way.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that would be a good way to have started the conversation.
Right.
And it was we didn't really have any time to talk to our family because of like how we were like traveling back and forth. But if that was important to us and if we would have done it again, I would have made the time.
Yeah,
for it.
We could have.
Yeah.
If we would have just decided and just done it on our own, it would have been fine. And I think next time, that's been a lesson throughout this whole process that doesn't even really have to do with Christianity, but just if you know that you need to have a hard conversation with someone or with a group of people, just do it. Like, just have that conversation as soon as possible, because you'll always feel better afterwards. Even if the conversation doesn't go well necessarily, it's just such a burden off your shoulders, and it frees you up to be like present and be with the people you're with, instead of constantly being preoccupied with, oh no, I need to talk to them about this, but I'm kind of hiding it from them.
I mean, communication is hard, especially with family where you have so many like,
it's complicated,
preconceived reactions. I don't know. Just like, it is really complicated. So don't feel bad if you're having a hard time with it, because there's so much more in a family conversation than just like a conversation with someone you might not know as well. There's like a lot of deep-seated things, triggers.
Right.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah, history. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that was helpful to some of you guys. I'm hoping that some of you can relate to it as well, or maybe take something away from it for your relationships with your families.
Yeah. Family is weird. But they are a part of our life here in our society and our culture. And the best way to deal with it is try to be open and honest, loving. And if that's not working out, then
that's all you can do.
That's all you can do on your part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
And thanks for chatting with us this morning.
Yes. Drinking your tea with us.
We'll talk to you next time. Thank you all so much for coming along on this journey with us. All of your messages and support means so much. If you'd like to connect with us or support our podcast, there are a few different ways you can do that. First, you can find us on Instagram at born.again.again. You can also join our private group on Facebook.
Or you can check out our website, bornagainagain.co, where we have all of these episodes, our blog with some posts that we've written, as well as a big list of books, movies, documentaries, and articles that have been helpful in our deconversion. And finally, if you'd like to support us financially, you can do that through our Patreon.
Again, thank you so much.